All right, guys, back again with another video for you. Today I wanted to talk about a couple of things dealing with buying a suppressor. This isn't necessarily a video for first-time buyers. It could be for anybody that already owns a can and is looking to purchase a new one. So some of the things that you may not have heard or asked about that have to deal with suppressing a rifle that can kind of be a stumbling block in certain situations. So let's get into it. You know, everybody talks about if you're looking to build a rifle, or maybe guys are shopping around for their first AR-15, you know, they get on the forums or they talk to their friends and they want to know, what rifle should I get? Well, the same thing goes for suppressors. Guys are always like, what suppressor should I get? And, you know, I hate the question that everybody comes back with is, well, what's your intended use? And I get it, you know, everybody's heard the whole, you know, mission, dick drives the gear. I get it. The issue is a lot of guys may not have anything to go off of, and so even that question isn't necessarily easy for them to answer, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, the problem can be that they get led down the wrong path when looking for something really specific in a suppressor, especially decibel ratings. You know, if you're gonna go out there and decide that you want the absolute quietest can on the market, it's gonna look very different from a different can that would give you, in my opinion, better overall performance, rather than a can that posts the best numbers but really falls flat in a lot of other areas. And so, you know, if you're looking to buy a can, you know, in my previous video when I talked about K cans, you know, you've probably already done a little bit of research around, you know, decibel rating, flash suppression, weight, length, all that stuff is easily found online. The first thing that I would say is, if you're looking for a suppressor, and even if it's your first one, the better question really is, what host weapon are you thinking about putting it on? Or even weapons. You know, my last video I said how I'm not really a big fan of the modularity of some of these new suppressors that can handle everything, 9mm, 308, 223. You know, I get why that would seem like an advantage to some guys, but again, going around and changing the baffle stacks and the end caps all the time is kind of a hassle to me. So, you know, what host weapon are you putting it on? And I ask that because I don't think a lot of guys understand how it's not just as simple as having a $500 AR-15 and putting a $500 suppressor on it and having a great experience, because a lot of things cannot go right. And specifically what I'm talking about is gas port size on the host AR-15. Specifically, I'm talking about, you know, semi-auto AR-15s. Gas port size on the host barrel, and then the back pressure of the can itself. Those are two things that deserve a little bit of attention beforehand if you're gonna have a really good experience the first go around. So I say that because, you know, in the past, when I first got the Sandman, the K, I had that on a 14.5 ballistic advantage barrel with a pinned gas block. And, you know, I'm not saying this to throw any manufacturer under the bus, but, you know, the truth of the matter is that gun was really overgassed with this can. And so, you know, then you get on the rabbit hole of the gas box pinned. I'm gonna live with that. I'm gonna try and correct the problem on the back end, meaning recoil spring and buffer weight. And I ended up running a Springco Red, which is pretty much the stiffest spring that Springco makes. And I just thought, man, this is not how I imagined this going. Because let's be honest, if you're running a Springco Red, your bolt carrier velocity is very high and it's not ideal. So fast forward, 4 or 5 years, a couple things that I've learned, just through my own experiences, if I would have thought of that ahead of time, I most likely, if I was committed to that barrel, definitely would have gone with an adjustable gas block. Because if you have a rifle that is already mildly overgassed or very overgassed, unsuppressed, it's going to only get worse as soon as you put that can on. And so, for me, one of the things I look at is ejection pattern. If you're running suppressed all the time and your cases are going to 1 o'clock, 1:30, your gun is overgassed. That's the truth of it. And it's kind of up to you to decide if that's tolerable, if it's not. For me, the truth of the matter is, if your gun is ejecting training ammo at 1 or 1:30, the gun's overgassed. That is not going to feel the same as if you either bled gas off or restricted the gas and got that ejection pattern back to 3 or 4 o'clock. It's just not going to feel the same. You are going to feel more recoil when you have an overgassed gun and a reasonably high back pressure can. And so, most barrel manufacturers don't necessarily cater to guys running suppressors. It comes out as the gun's more reliable. I get it, more gas. You can run the bolt in adverse conditions. The problem is, like I said, throw that high back pressure can on and it is not a pleasant experience. More gas in the face, more felt recoil, and overall not ideal in terms of parts wear either. Just a quick story. I was running a gun that had a barrel from a company that I've bought from in the past. Always had a good experience, but it was my first time running it suppressed. And so just a regular fixed BCM gas block. Got the muzzle device already, the can cleared. I had the thing built out, and it still shot good, but I could tell that it was much snappier, right, than before. And so nothing unmanageable, but I wasn't sweeping any brass at the range because it was literally going at 1 o'clock, just shooting it out into the grass, from the bench. And so tried to do a couple things on the recoil spring side. I was running an A5 system. Guys out there that are running the A5 system, they're good, but I can tell you it's not a magic fix-all when your gun is overgassed, because I ended up messing around and going to the A5 H4, the absolute heaviest buffer that I could run in that, and I still couldn't get the ejection pattern back to 3 o'clock. And so, rocked along, wasn't having any problems. Went to the range one day and my trigger wouldn't reset. So BCM receiver sets, I'm running a Geisley SSAE, which I've run Geisley triggers for several years, never had an issue, and it wouldn't reset. I manually had to reset it. And so took the gun apart at the range, lubed it, cleaned it, couldn't see anything physically wrong with it, and did it again. And after about the third or fourth time, when I fired, it actually double fired on me. And so I said, okay, this something's wrong. Got in contact with Geisley. They kind of asked the general questions. I'm sure guys email them and say, hey, the trigger's broke. They're just trying to get some general information about what kind of gun it was in, what kind of ammo. We went through all that, and I pretty much said, listen, I'd like to send it in, for you guys to look at it. And once they took a look, I'll try and put in a picture of the email response, but they essentially said the springs are extremely compressed. Essentially, the springs were wore out in the trigger, and that was what was causing it not to reset. So I essentially beat the gun to death because it was overgassed. And I would have never thought that that would have been an issue. And I get it, there's a lot of guys out there that haven't had an issue like that, and that's fine. But for me, from this point on, I either run an adjustable gas block or I buy a barrel from a manufacturer that advertises smaller gas ports for running suppressed. This one is a Criterion Core. I'll link I'll put a link to their video. They talk about it with that Core series extensively about it being properly gassed to run suppressed or unsuppressed. I'm running a Sequence Precision adjustable gas block on this one. It's just such a better experience. And so I get it, it's kind of hard to know whether or not you need one before you even get the can, but my advice is do a little bit of research. You know, don't assume that everything's gonna be fine. It can make a much better experience if you can actually control that gas or have a gun that's meant to be shot suppressed half the time anyway. I think it's worth it in the end. So we talked about gas port size, and then whether or not the can is high back pressure or not. You know, OSS, I don't have any experience shooting their cans, but that's kind of their thing, right? It's a flow-through design. They essentially say you don't have to do anything with the recoil system. You don't have to change anything by putting their can on. You know what I mean? You're going to get the same ejection, and that's probably true. The downside is, remember, if you look at the whole list of attributes of a suppressor, I'll put a link to a video that Surefire did. That creates a lot of flash out the front of the can, and so, you know, that's up to you whether or not that's super important to you. But in terms of decibels at the front of the can and flash suppression, obviously OSS not number one. And again, it's not a knock on them. You know, some cans are good at some things, some are good at others. Again, the reason why I do like Surefires is, I think for me, they check a lot of the boxes that are important in terms of a suppressor. So they're not the best necessarily at any one, but they are good at a lot of things, which makes them, for me, a good overall can. So anyway, again, for me, dead air, pretty high back pressure, running a 5.56 end cap. You know, it's just something to be aware of. Again, the main fixes for me is either buy a barrel that's got a properly spec'd smaller gas port or run an adjustable gas block. I didn't have a lot of luck just running a fixed gas block and then trying to run a heavier spring or buffer weight. You can only do so much there, and again, it's not ideal. Just in closing, guys, one of the last things to consider when you're looking at a can is cost. I understand that not everybody can go out and drop that much coin on a can. But to me, you know, I see a lot of guys out there that kind of advertise as doing reviews on budget builds. But if you've got a $500 AR and then you end up buying 4 or 5 more, I would rather just have one really good one with a really good can than have a safe full of budget rifles with budget optics and budget suppressors. Remember, you know, once you get the stamp back on this, if you really don't like it, you can't just take it down to the pawn shop and get rid of it. I mean, you're gonna be in a long-term relationship with a suppressor. And I get it, no matter which one you buy, you're gonna have to pay $200 on top of that, you know. Not to knock anybody, I mean, I get it, a Yankee Hill Turbo K is probably like $600, a Surefire's $1,100. I mean, there's a big gap between there. But, you know, think about it in the long term, you know, which one is gonna give you better performance for longer, you know, which one are you actually gonna keep using 5-10 years from now? Just something to consider. All right, guys, if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below, and check out the description for those links to some of those other videos I talked about. See you later.